So, think about your last vacation for a second.
Yeah.
When you finally packed up your bags and, headed to the airport to go home,
Yeah.
what did you actually leave behind?
Right. It's a good question.
Because we always hear this golden rule of travel, right?
Yeah.
Leave no trace, take only pictures, leave only footprints. But what if leaving no trace just isn't actually enough anymore?
It's really not.
Right? What if the new baseline goal is to leave a place fundamentally better than you found it? So, welcome to today's deep dive. It is Sunday, July 26, 2026. And today we are going on a mission to explore how your love for reading, yes, literally just reading books, could actually be the secret key to healing the global travel industry and, restoring local communities.
It really represents this radical shift in, well, how we think about packing our bags. We are going to be challenging a lot of core assumptions about modern travel today.
We really are.
And we're anchoring this whole discussion in a really detailed 2025 academic chapter. It's titled Literary Tourism in Northern Portugal and its Contribution to Regenerative Tourism. It's led by researcher Bruno Barbosa Sousa and a whole team of colleagues. And it basically asks us to look at tourism not as this destructive force or even a neutral one, but as a potential engine for deep ecological and, cultural healing.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because
Yeah.
before we can understand how, a paperback novel actually heals a local ecosystem or an economy, we have to understand the psychology of the person holding the book.
Exactly. The literary tourist.
Right, the literary tourist. And I'm trying to picture the mindset here. Is literary tourism essentially like visiting a movie set, but for book lovers? Like you just want to stand where the magic happened.
Well, what's fascinating here is that it goes so much deeper than snapping a photo at a filming location.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean, when someone visits a movie set, they're usually looking for this one-to-one visual match. They want to stand exactly where the camera was and see what the lens saw.
Okay, yeah, I've done that.
Right. But literary tourists are chasing something the researchers call constructive authenticity.
Constructive authenticity. I mean, that sounds like a bit of an oxymoron at first glance.
It does, yeah.
Because if it's constructed by the person, how can it actually be authentic?
It sounds totally contradictory, but it makes perfect sense when you look at the traveler's actual goal.
Okay.
For these specific travelers, historical factual accuracy just isn't the primary prize.
Okay.
They aren't just verifying that a building was built in 1840 or that a specific author used, I don't know, a specific brand of ink. They are seeking a deeply personal, symbolic experience.
So it's more about the feeling.
Exactly. The authenticity is constructed in their own mind and their own emotions based entirely on their relationship with the text. And the researchers actually use a really helpful acronym to describe the 4 pillars driving these travelers. It's HAIR, H-A-I-R.
HAIR. Okay, let's break that down because I want to understand what is actually pulling someone across the globe for a book. What's the H?
So H stands for heritage. This isn't just about the book itself, but the broader cultural heritage of the area that birthed the story. They want to understand the society, the politics, and the history that influenced the narrative.
Right, so if you're reading Charles Dickens, you want to understand Victorian London's class struggles, not just the basic plot of Oliver Twist.
Precisely. You want the context. Then you have A for author.
Which is pretty self-explanatory, I guess.
Right, but it's deep. Literary tourists are intensely curious about the author as a flawed, complex human being. They want to see where the writer struggled, where they succeeded, and the exact environment that shaped their psyche.
Okay, so heritage and author. What about the I?
I is for intellectual. This is the desire for mental stimulation.
Oh, like the analytical side of it.
Yeah, it's the thrill of dissecting a text, discussing themes, and gaining a deeper academic or philosophical understanding of the work, but while standing in its birthplace.
That makes total sense. It's almost like a book club on location.
That's a great way to put it.
And the R?
R is residence. So this is the craving to see the physical domestic spaces where the creation actually took place. The home, the study, the actual desk.
The room where it happened?
Exactly. It's a highly emotional space. In fact, the source material describes this culmination of the HAIR motivations as a secular pilgrimage.
A secular pilgrimage.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a heavy phrase. It implies a level of deep devotion that you really don't normally associate with a casual weekend city break.
It implies immense devotion, and the text provides a perfect example of this mechanism in action. Think about the tourists who visit the graves of the philosophers and writers Jean-Paul Sartre and Simone de Beauvoir in Paris.
Okay, yeah.
People don't go to that cemetery just to look at the stone and verify the birth dates. They go to feel a sense of spiritual communion with those offers.
Wow.
Yeah, they leave little tributes like metro tickets or pens. They use the space for deep personal reflection. It functions structurally, almost exactly like a religious pilgrimage, but it's entirely centered around literature and philosophy.
But let me push back on this a little bit,
Sure.
because going to a cemetery in Paris to commune with French existentialists,
Yeah.
I mean, that sounds incredibly niche.
It does.
Is this whole concept just a hobby for hardcore literary superfans, like the kind of people who can quote entire chapters from memory?
Not necessarily. I mean, you don't have to be a super fan to feel the pull of what the researchers call genius loci.
Genius loci.
Yeah.
That translates to the spirit of the place, right?
That's the translation, yeah. It's that tangible, almost electric feeling you get when you step into an author's domestic setting.
Oh, I know that feeling.
Right. When you see the actual desk where they wrote, or you look out the window at the exact landscape that inspired a famous scene, it blurs the lines between fiction and reality.
It makes it real.
It does. The spirit of the place acts as a bridge. It allows any visitor, even one who just read the book casually on a flight, to feel a profound emotional connection to the destination. You aren't just observing a town from the outside. You are stepping inside a narrative.
Here's where it gets really interesting for me. We've established that people have these intense, emotional, almost spiritual connections to literary sites. But how does that translate into actual, measurable environmental and social change?
That's the core question.
Because, honestly, I think a lot of us are a little cynical about tourism buzzwords.
Oh, absolutely.
We hear the term sustainable tourism all the time. Every hotel puts a little card on the bed telling you to reuse your towel to save the planet. And now your source is talking about regenerative tourism. Isn't this just the newest corporate rebrand? How does a tourist holding a copy of a novel actually heal a place?
It's a completely fair question, and it's vital to draw a hard line between those two terms because they represent entirely different operational models.
Okay, tell me the difference.
Sustainable tourism is fundamentally about damage control. The goal is just to minimize your negative impact. You buy carbon offsets, you reduce plastic, you reuse that hotel towel. You are trying to leave the place exactly as you found it.
Right. So if I were to use an analogy, sustainable tourism is like going to a local coffee shop, drinking your coffee, and then wiping down the table before you leave.
Exactly.
You didn't make the coffee shop any worse, but you didn't really improve it either. You just maintained the status quo.
That is a brilliant way to conceptualize it. Regenerative tourism, following your analogy, is going to that same coffee shop, buying your drink, and then purchasing a brand new top-of-the-line espresso machine for the staff.
Oh, wow.
Right, so they can serve more people, make more money, and thrive tomorrow. It is positive, it is active. The goal isn't just to do less harm, it is to actively restore and build up the social, cultural, and environmental conditions of the destination.
So it's the difference between doing no harm and engineering actual good.
Yes.
But how does that work in practice? I mean, how do books fund the new espresso machine, so to speak?
Well, the text brings up a fantastic real-world example to map out this mechanism, and that's Dublin, Ireland.
Oh, sure. Huge literary city.
Exactly. Dublin is synonymous with literary giants like James Joyce and Samuel Beckett. But the city isn't just resting on its laurels, putting up a few bronze statues and hoping tourists buy postcards.
Right.
Dublin is actively integrating its massive literary festivals with incredibly strict, eco-friendly practices and funding models.
So they basically use the literature as the bait.
Exactly that. The tourists come because they are pulled by James Joyce. But once they are there, the festival's infrastructure is designed to regenerate the city.
How so?
Well, they mandate zero-waste policies for vendors. They use the platform of literary events to highlight environmental themes, perhaps discussing the River Liffey as it appears in Joyce's work. And then they use the revenue generated by the tourists to fund local ecological preservation. Or they use it to support sustainable local businesses.
That's incredibly smart.
It is. The literature is the economic engine that powers the environmental restoration.
But Dublin is a massive capital city. I mean, they have a huge budget, millions of international visitors, and just a huge infrastructure to pull that off.
Does this model only work for famous, wealthy cities? Because your source focuses heavily on Northern Portugal, which has a very different profile.
Right. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, Northern Portugal is actually the perfect laboratory precisely because it demonstrates how this works on a regional and rural scale.
Okay.
The region is utilizing its dense cultural and literary wealth in highly strategic ways. Take the city of Porto, for
I
example.
love Porto.
It's beautiful, and they have built an entire immersive tourism itinerary around a novel called An English Family by the classic Portuguese author Julio Dinas.
Oh, wow. It's almost like the destination becomes a living, breathing manuscript. You aren't just walking down a street, you're walking down page 42. You
Oh.
become an active participant in the story. And that active participation is the core of the regenerative loop. Because to maintain that living manuscript experience for the tourist, the city has a massive financial incentive to preserve the historic buildings.
Right?
They have to maintain the cobblestone streets and support the local artisans who keep that era's aesthetics alive.
Otherwise, the illusion breaks.
Exactly. The tourism dollars directly fund cultural preservation that might otherwise just be bulldozed for modern development. We see this in Coimbra, too, leveraging the works of Miguel Torga, and in Lisbon, where they've created these massive digital literary maps mapping out the life and works of Fernando Pessoa.
I love that idea. You're navigating the modern city through the mind of a historical poet. But practically speaking, where are all these literary tourists staying? Are there specific infrastructures built just to capture this revenue?
There are, and this is one of the most fascinating developments the researchers highlight. It's the rise of literary hotels and library hotels.
Oh, I've heard of these.
Yeah, in Portugal, you have places like the Lisboa Pessoa Hotel. And these aren't just standard corporate hotels with, like, a dusty bookshelf in the lobby.
Right, right.
The entire architecture, the interior design, and the guest experience are completely centered around an author's life and work.
So a literary hotel immerses you completely in that specific author's world? And a library hotel, how is that different?
A library hotel takes it a step further. The physical collection of books themselves is the primary attraction of the accommodation.
Oh, that sounds amazing.
It creates this slow, reflective environment. It encourages guests to stay longer, engage deeper, and spend their money within a localized cultural ecosystem rather than giving it to a multinational hotel chain.
That honestly sounds like absolute heaven. But I want to talk about the rural impact too. Because it's one thing to have a boutique library hotel in a major hub like Lisbon or Porto. How does this regenerate struggling rural areas that obviously don't have massive literary festivals?
That is where the regenerative aspect shines the brightest, honestly, and the mechanics are brilliant. The researchers point to rural areas in northern Portugal that are combining their local literary heritage with traditional physical cultural practices.
Like what?
Well, there's a specific example in the municipality of Cabeceiras de Basto. They are combining literary tourism with something called Jogo do Pau.
Wait, what is that?
It's a traditional Portuguese martial art. It's a type of stick fighting game that is deeply, deeply embedded in the rural culture.
Stick fighting. Wow.
Yeah. It's the kind of hyper-local tradition that often just dies out as younger generations move away to the cities for work.
All right.
But by linking the local literature, like the historical stories and poems written about this specific region, to this traditional physical game, they offer a highly unique cultural experience.
Okay, let me make sure I'm mapping out this economic loop correctly.
Go for it.
So, the literary tourist reads a book set in this rural region. They travel to Cabeceiras de Basto to experience the genius loci, the spirit of the place.
Right.
And while they are there, they pay for a cultural tour that includes a demonstration of this Jogo do Pau. That ticket price then provides a direct wage to the local people keeping the martial art alive.
You've mapped it perfectly.
So if the tourist didn't come for the literature in the first place, there wouldn't be a financial incentive to practice the stick fighting, and the tradition might just fade away completely. The book literally acts as the economic engine that saves the martial art.
It restores the cultural fabric. It provides actual economic stability to rural areas, which prevents depopulation. It's a closed, perfect loop of cultural regeneration.
Okay, so this all paints a really beautiful picture of how the mechanics work. But I have to ask the practical question about the traveler profile. Who is actually booking these trips?
Ah, the demographic.
Yeah, because when I picture this, I imagine someone who brings like 3 dense hardcovers on a beach trip instead of scrolling on their phone. Is this just an older, wealthier demographic?
Well, the data in the study confirms that, yes, currently, this market is heavily skewed toward an older demographic.
Which makes sense.
It makes complete logical sense. They are the ones with the free time to take long, slow trips. They generally have more economic capacity to stay in those boutique library hotels, and they often have a deeper lifelong knowledge of these classic authors. And they frequently travel in couples or in organized cultural groups.
So they are the primary financial drivers right now. But is there a secondary market?
There is a massive, largely untapped secondary market that the researchers point out, and that's children and young readers.
Really? Children?
Think about the educational power of this model. For a child, literary tourism opens a physical door to exploring perspectives outside their own bubble.
Oh, I see. It takes the abstraction out of reading. Like, it's one thing to read a book about a different culture, but it's entirely another to read the book and then walk the physical streets where the characters lived.
Exactly. It builds immense imagination, but more importantly, it builds deep empathy and cultural literacy at a young age. You are essentially training the next generation to be regenerative travelers. You're teaching them early on that travel is about connecting with a place and supporting it, rather than just passively consuming it.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So to get more people, whether they are retirees or young families, to actually book these trips, the research talks about push and pull motivations. What are the mechanics there?
So the push and pull framework is essential for understanding the psychology of travel choices. The push factors are strictly internal.
Internal.
Yes, they are the emotional and psychological needs driving you, the traveler, from the inside. They basically push you out of your house.
So the push factors are all about my internal baggage. Like what? Give me an example.
A major one is the desire for interculturality. This is the genuine craving to connect with people who live differently than you do.
Grounding that in reality, interculturality is the difference between going to a foreign city and eating at the tourist trap restaurant near your hotel that serves hamburgers versus intentionally seeking out a tiny local cafe where the menu isn't even in English just to see how the locals actually live and eat.
That is the exact distinction. Other internal push factors include the need for a profound emotional experience, like we talked about with those secular pilgrimages, and the very practical need for a balance between work and well-being.
Oh, to escape burnout.
Exactly. A literary tour is fundamentally slow, it's reflective, it is the exact opposite of that chaotic, exhausting 10 cities in 5 days travel itinerary. It pushes you to slow down.
Okay, so if the push factors are my internal desires, the pull factors must be what the destination is doing to reel me in. It's the external reality.
Correct. The pull factors are where the local government and businesses have to do the heavy lifting. It's the actual infrastructure.
Right.
Are the roads to the rural stick-fighting demonstration accessible? Do the library hotels exist? And are they comfortable? Are there guided tours?
Makes sense.
But the most powerful pull factor is a destination's visible commitment to cultural preservation. Tourists are pulled to places that are clearly proud of their heritage and are actively working to protect it. They prefer that over places that have, paved over their history to build generic shopping malls.
So what does this all mean? If we zoom all the way out, it means that traveling doesn't have to be this guilt-inducing exercise where you're constantly worrying about your carbon footprint or whether you're contributing to the overcrowding and degradation of a local neighborhood.
Exactly.
By intentionally seeking out a region's literary heritage, you can actively participate in preserving its culture, its ecosystems, and its local economy. You become part of the solution just by indulging your love of books.
It's a win-win.
It really is.
Yeah.
So the next time you're planning a vacation, maybe don't just look up the best restaurants or the biggest beaches. Look up the local authors. Find out who wrote the stories that define the region. Consider booking a literary tour or spending a night in a library hotel. You get a deeper, richer experience, and the community gets a traveler who actively funds their regenerative efforts.
It is a profound shift in perspective from being a passive consumer to an active restorer. But before we wrap up, this research raises an important question, and I really want to leave you with a final thought to mull over.
We do.
We've talked exclusively about books today, but the source material makes a brief, highly fascinating note about adaptation.
Like movies.
Yes, it mentions that adapting these books for film or television significantly heightens tourists' desires to visit those locations. They specifically point to the massive influx of fans to locations associated with Jane Austen adaptations or, Sherlock Holmes.
Oh, absolutely. A hit TV show or a blockbuster movie can put a sleepy, totally unknown town on the global map overnight.
Right. So here's a provocative thought to take away. We know that fictional narratives displayed on a screen are arguably the single most powerful driver for modern tourists to visit a specific place.
Yeah.
And we now know, based on this regenerative framework, that this kind of narrative-driven tourism can fundamentally rebuild the economy, preserve the culture, and fund the ecology of that place.
Okay, I see where you're going with this.
If both of those things are true, could the ultimate tool for combating climate change and economic depression in struggling, vulnerable regions actually be art?
Wow.
Could we intentionally write and film blockbuster fictional stories set in the very places that need the most funding and healing, using Hollywood not just for entertainment, but as a literal weapon for global regeneration?
Now that is a story I want to see play out. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.